All right, so today I am providing an introduction to agritourism or rural tourism, some may call it, just to introduce the organization with which I work. Which would have come across in the my introduction. I work for the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, IICA or ECA, and we are a technical corporation agency for agriculture that is spread across the Western Hemisphere. We have offices in the Caribbean, Latin America, and North America, and we seek to enhance the productivity of agriculture within the Western Hemisphere and the welfare of rural communities. So we work across a number of sectors, even though, you know, and so that is how we came to be mingling with agriculture, because we recognize that mingling with tourism, because we recognize that the tourism sector provides a market for the agricultural sector and for rural communities. Okay, so I'm going to proceed with my presentation, and I want to tell at certain points during my presentation, I will, you know, maybe stop or pause or ask if people have any comments or questions and so forth. So, you know, if there's a burning issue, please feel free to raise your hand. I hope I'll be able to see it. If not, Mr. McDowell, you can always interrupt me and indicate if persons have any burning questions in the chat or their hands are raised.
Yes, so I will be monitoring the chat as well, but typically we go through the presentation, so you'll be doing that.
Okay, no problem.
Yes.
Okay, no problem. All right, so this is the outline for today's presentation. We will be looking at, you know, what exactly are we talking about when we talk about agritourism, the potential benefits of agritourism linkages, and the various ways in which we can have, or, you know, ways in which these sorts of linkages are executed. For example, improving the supply of local agricultural products to the tourism sector, as well as bringing tourism closer to rural areas and farming locations. And we will also be looking at trends towards alternatives to traditional tourism and how you can use your farm or rural community as a tourism destination, tips on developing and executing your idea, as well as agritourism examples. Okay, so what do we mean when we use the term agritourism? From ECO's standpoint, we see agritourism as the promotion of increased linkages between agriculture and tourism. Yes, agriculture is our tour business, but we also recognize that tourism is the dominant industry in the Caribbean. The tourism sector provides significant market opportunities for agriculture and rural communities, and can comprise the supply of local products to the tourism sector and or taking tourism into rural areas, right? So there are many ways in which we can foster greater linkages between the agriculture and tourism sectors, and we generally believe that there is room for stronger linkages between the two sectors in all of our countries. And so just looking at tourism and why tourism is important to the countries, to the agricultural sector, to even rural communities who sometimes feel far removed, depending on which country you're in, from the tourism market. So tourism actually contributes 10% of world GDP. These are figures from the United Nations World Tourism Organization, for short UNWTO. Tourism internationally generates 1 in 10 jobs and accounts for 7% of exports globally, right? If you want to get some more information on international or world tourism, you can look at the link that is provided on this slide. And Mr. McDowell, I don't know if you already have my presentation, but if not, I can make it available and it can be shared with all the participants. Okay. Okay, so there's a quote I found from the same UNWTO website. Today, the business volume of tourism equals or even surpasses that of oil exports, food products, or automobiles. So you begin to see the scale of the tourism industry, and as such, the potential opportunities it can provide for the farming sector and for rural communities. Now, coming a little bit closer to home, in the Caribbean, we are considered quite a tourism-dependent region. So, for example, in several Caribbean countries, the tourism earnings account for more than 60% of the respective country's GDP. And so you can see the graph to the right, which has starting from Aruba, #1, and going straight down. And it includes several Caribbean and Latin American countries. And it shows the level of dependence on tourism. So this is a tourism dependency index. It was actually done in 2018. And you can see how highly ranked some of our countries are. I think among the countries on this presentation, I think St. Lucia here is ranked #6. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is ranked #15. And St. Kitts ranked #16, right? And where I'm from, Jamaica, we're ranked right behind at #17. So we're pretty much all in the same boat, right? Tourism means a lot to the countries in which we live. However, the unfortunate thing is that revenue leakages, and when we say revenue leakages, we mean revenue from tourism, the tourism industry in our country that does not remain in our local economies, right? And so revenue leakages can be as much as 70%, which means that in some countries, we are retaining as little as 30% of that tourism dollar or tourism revenue. And so that is one of the reasons why we speak about, or we encourage greater linkages between agriculture and tourism sector, or rural sector and the tourism, because we feel that the more we are linked, the more other sectors are linked to the tourism sector, the less likely we will have these high levels of leakages, and the more that will be retained in our local economies. Okay, so we look at tourism, right? And I also, just going back to the issue of tourism before I move on to agriculture, another thing that you have to recognize is that tourism has been very resilient, even given the situation with COVID. I saw some statistics from the Caribbean Tourism Organization for 2023, or very recently, and it showed that there are several countries in the Caribbean that have regained their pre-COVID levels in terms of tourism arrivals, right? And other countries have rebounded significantly between 2022 and 2023, even if they're not yet at 2019 pre-COVID levels. But it just shows you that even after a major shock, such as COVID-19, when country borders were closed, no flights were coming in, essentially tourism had shut down. We're almost at the point of near erasing that dent, right? So tourism has proved to be quite resilient despite severe shocks. And COVID-19 would not have been the first of such shocks, right? There are previous situations internationally that would have caused dips or declines in tourism arrivals, and typically the sector has rebounded internationally and in the Caribbean. But then now let us look at what's happening to agriculture. Unfortunately, agricultural development in the Caribbean has not kept pace with tourism development. The sector's exposure to external shocks, such as hurricanes, reduced commodity prices, increased international competition, dependence on a few main export crops, limited access to financial resources to be able to scale and modernize operations. And stakeholders in the agricultural sector are often described as fragmented because the sector comprises a lot of small-scale suppliers. And as such, there is a lack of bargaining power, lack of cohesion, lack of organization as a result of a landscape with several small farmer stakeholders that are not necessarily acting together and acting at scale, right? There's also the issue of increased food imports, which has, typically over recent decades, a lot of our countries have experienced this issue. Okay, I'm just gonna say some of the reasons why we want to increase local linkages. Let me just check something. Okay, so given some of the challenges that we have seen in the agricultural sector, and some of the benefits that we see in the case of the tourism sector, these are some of the ways we think that if we have stronger linkages between agriculture and tourism, that we can see general benefits, right? So typically there is expected to be an expansion of the sale of agricultural produce or commodities. So if the hotels are demanding more local produce, then you're going to see increased farmer output, right? You will be able to diversify farm income. You have additional markets. You also have the possibility of other types of revenue generation from the farm, such as farm tours, farm-to-table dining, and so forth. There's a possibility, of course, for job creation. For example, tour guides. A lot of tour guides tend to be, for example, young people, so it opens up opportunities to youth. In the case of women, a lot of women are into craft making that can be souvenirs or other types of value-added products that go very well for souvenirs to the tourism market. So, there are opportunities, particularly for youth and women, in the case of, stronger linkages between agriculture and tourism sector. Then there's the issue of adding value to your local produce, because there are greater market opportunities for a range of products. A lot of times these are shelf-stable products, processed products from local materials that the tourists can take back or sample. And then there's also the issue of community collaboration and partnership, that by, the types of agritourism ventures, you can help to promote greater collaboration or partnership within your community to be able to meet these touristic demands. Then there's the issue of when others value what you take for granted, right? So there are a lot of very, great assets within the rural community. But because we have always been there, we don't see it, we don't value it, we take it for granted. But an outsider coming in, it's new to them. And as such, it's something that they place a value on. And so it helps us to see the assets that we may take for granted in a new light. And so this, in a sense, ties in with building local pride in what you have, right? And then finally, separate and apart from the benefits that accrue to the agricultural sector and rural communities, agritourism or greater agritourism experiences actually also strengthens the tourist offer. It diversifies your tourism product and it makes it more attractive to your visitors. The picture that I actually have on screen is of a farmer, a coffee farmer actually in Jamaica, who decided to set up a visitor center on a portion of his farm, right? Because he is in the lush mountains and he thought to himself that this is somewhere where tourists would like to visit, even though it is his farm. And he has received several guests along the way and has improved little by little on what he has to offer, just by starting out small, just by having an idea, that what I have, I can share with visitors. Okay, so when we start with one of the first ways that we can link the tourism sector to the hotel, to the agriculture, sorry, I accidentally, oops, to the agriculture sector. I was actually trying to see, I know that there are a couple of messages in the chat, but I guess Mr. McDowell will let me know if there's anything that I need to pay attention to. So one of the ways, again, in terms of linking the two sectors is how do we increase the supply of agricultural produce to the tourism market. From my discussions with people across the Caribbean, I get the feeling that this is a sore topic, right? There are several challenges. From the hotel side, I've heard of a complaint of inadequate quality and consistency of supply of local produce. I have heard that there is an issue in terms of insufficient post-harvest knowledge and skills, generally poor supply chain logistics for the distribution of agricultural commodities to the hotel sector. I was in a discussion, I think last week, and and there, a particular country in the Caribbean, I won't call the name, and it was bemoaning that the hotels just find it so easy just to bring in a container from Miami, rather than to use their local produce, and they find various excuses as to why not. Some of what I've mentioned before in terms of quality and consistency, etc., and supply chain linkages, and so we have to figure out, particularly from the supply chain, how to make it easier for hotels to source locally than to source internationally, right? We have to understand what might be some of their pain points, and how to overcome those points to make it easier to organize the farm supply in such a way that it is more attractive for the hotel sector to source locally. There's a need to incentivize local sourcing through discussions or sensitizations of hotel chefs, for example, greater information exchange. One of the issues that actually has come up, was actually mentioned to me at one particular forum, looking at the linkages between agriculture and the tourism sector, was that it was felt that agriculture and the tourism sectors don't necessarily speak the same language, right? So for example, the tourism sector expects year-round access to all food items, while several agricultural sectors are seasonal. So, how do we bridge that gap between what the market wants and what the farming sector can supply, right? There are some enlightened hotels, though, that will have seasonal menus. So their menus will be based on what is available at a given period of the year. However, there's also the challenge that several hotels in several countries, we're seeing the emergence or the spread of larger and larger hotels. And these large hotels increasingly have international supply chains. And some of these supply chains are coordinated outside of country, right? They're coordinated at some headquarters somewhere else in the world, right? And so it's sometimes I think those of us in the agriculture sector need to have a better understanding of how these hotel supply chains work and how can local supply fit in and reorient their sourcing operations to local supplies. And if our agricultural sectors remain fragmented and uncoordinated, then it is difficult to interface with these mega or international supply systems, right? Nonetheless, we think, and particularly from the standpoint of ECO, we think that there are solutions. We believe that there are ways to bridge some of these hurdles, starting with dialogue. How can we communicate better with hotels to find out about their product needs, their quality specifications, understand and communicate the seasonality so that they can, you know, if they are so sensitized, can schedule their menus accordingly. How do we sensitize the chefs? Reserving of local dishes and so forth. Also, the need to lobby for government support to explicitly promote and facilitate local sourcing, even if this may require some level of coercion for hotels to get on the board. We need to think about creating win-win. If someone wants to speak? Hello? No? Should I continue? Okay. We need to figure out how to create win-win collaboration situations. So hotels see a benefit from sourcing locally, right? Because again, it's business, and they will go where you know, their business decisions support their bottom line. So we have to be able to find a way that it is beneficial to the hotels as well, to source locally. From the farm perspective, need to plant according to market needs, to understand what the hotels need and plant accordingly, to implement practices that enhance quality and post-harvest quality, ensure that, you know, food safety practices are implemented. We were discussing the other day as well that your hotel sector can almost be seen like an export market, in a kind of miniature version, that the same standards that are creeping in to your export requirements are going to, you know, also be demanded by your hotel sector, because they may tell you that the guests that they cater for come from these international markets. And as such, there's need to adhere to those types of food safety practices and standards. The issue of traceability is one of those considerations when you're talking about food safety. How do you trace back the product in the event that something can happen? And this might be some of the requirements that the hotels may ask for. Also, there's a need to experiment with new crops that, you know, maybe the country did not traditionally grow these crops, but it is a crop or it is a product that is demanded by the tourism market, you know, and so it offers potential to farmers as well as new growing systems to ensure that you can meet the quality standards that the tourism market requires. And then onto the issue of post-harvest, to have, you know, ensure that harvesting is done in such a way
Hello there. I think there's a problem with her.
Yes, I was wondering if it's my internet.
I'm not sure. She just went. It froze, if you like.
Yeah, Miss Brandon, if you're speaking right now, we're not able to hear you as your screen it shows as it's frozen. Oh, okay.
I believe she's gone offline, if you ask me.
No, I think Miss Brandon, I see you're back.
Yes, how long was I off? I just realized that something happened. I've been talking and then
Yeah, for about a minute or so.
I wouldn't say
oh,
that long, but you were, yeah, your screen was frozen for a little bit.
okay, all right. Let me share again, and you can let me know if I am on the slide at which you would have left off, and probably give me a sense of what you would have last heard me speaking about. I'm not sure maybe my internet connection might have dipped. I know we're having sometimes there's, you know, we're having a little bit of inclement weather here, and that can affect the internet connectivity. But I'm gonna share again.
Okay, I don't know if your internet
She's frozen again.
your internet might have dropped again, Miss Brandon. Let me know when you could hear. You could hear this because we're not able to see you or hear you right now.
Oh,
Okay, so yeah, I can see your slide now.
okay. So everybody's seen my presentation.
Yes.
Okay, could you just let me know what would be the last thing you heard me say?
You were speaking about the hotels and where they source their products from.
Right. Um,
Also, the need for a win-win situation.
right. So, okay, so we're talking here about the issue, the need for dialogue, right? So that I was at the first point here. It's just I had gone on significantly.
Okay, look like your connection.
But anyway, so yeah, so I'm just gonna recap and then continue. I'm still
Alright,
breathing?
so yeah, so Ms. Brandon, I would recommend that you turn off your camera.
Sure, not a problem.
Yeah, turn
Yes,
off your
so
camera and just leave the presentation. That should help with the bandwidth.
agreed. Please let me know if you have lost, if I'm freezing up again.
Okay, no problem. But we could hear you fine now.
Okay, great. All right, should help with my video off. Okay, so I think where I would have left off is that, just talking about the need for dialogue, the need for continued and expanded dialogue between the agriculture and tourism sectors, right? So sensitize.
Okay, look like you dipped again. Ms. Brandon, I think your connection it dropped again.
About serving local dishes, about the seasonal. Mr. McDowell, I'm hoping that you can hear me now.
I'm hearing you I'm hearing you now, but there was a
We
little
don't know
while
what's gonna happen. Okay,
we
all
weren't
right.
hearing
Well,
you talk.
if I dip again, just let me know and I'll repeat what I said.
Okay. All
Right.
right.
So as a previous participant pardon?
No, you could go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. So yes, the need, as the participant reiterated, to have this dialogue
Okay, Miss Brandon, you dropped again.
between the two sectors so that there's a way to create win-win
And you
collaboration between the hubs to be able to
you broke about win-win collaborations.
Oh boy, it seems that I'm breaking up a lot. All right,
Yeah.
oh Lord, I mean, let us I'm crossing my fingers that the internet will restore itself.
Hopefully, yes.
Right.
All right, you could proceed, please.
Okay, so on the on farm, no. One of the areas that we need to focus on from a farming perspective is
Okay. One of the things we need to focus on is farming perspective. That's the last thing I heard.
planned according to market needs, right? By the hotel sector. What is Mr. McDowell, can I continue?
Yes, proceed.
Agronomic tourism sector, the hotel market, because they will say that we are catering for a clientele that is based in international markets where food safety standards are X or Y, right? So expect to be met with these types of requirements. And one of the key ones that always comes up, which is sometimes often a weak area in our Caribbean countries, is the issue of traceability. And so there may be need to look back and to upgrade our food safety practices. Also, if we're looking at planting according to the hotel demand, we might need to experiment with new crops, new growing systems, you know? How can we improve our production methodologies to ensure that we are producing according to the standard of the hotel sector? In the area of post-harvest, we have to endeavor to reduce spoilage, to see how we can consolidate small farmer output. That is another issue. Hotels don't necessarily want to be sourcing from many small farmers. They want to maybe go to one point from where they can access product or source local product at scale. So how do we aggregate, consolidate the supply chain so that there, you know, it makes it easier to procure locally, and also looking at the storage infrastructure prior to distribution, which helps to maintain post-harvest quality. And then finally, in the area of the supply logistics, what are the appropriate distribution mechanisms? The need to appreciate the hotel receival process, right? I know several years ago, for example, ICA had a project where we brought farmers to the back door of the hotels where they receive produce, so they can see what occurs when produce arrives at the hotel kitchen, right? And then there's this feedback dialogue to assess, have the hotels, are they satisfied with the supply that they have received, right? So it's a loop, it's a constant loop between dialogue and then amending practices according to that exchange, right? I would love to ask a question, if I may do so. Seeing as how St. Lucia is one of the countries on this presentation, I have heard of a St. Lucia Hotel Association Virtual Agricultural Clearinghouse, for short VACH. And my understanding is that the platform allows farmers to notify hotels of available produce. I don't know if anyone from St. Lucia is familiar with this platform. Is it still operational? Or what was the experience with such a platform, if anyone is familiar? If I can ask that question from any of the participants from St. Lucia.
Ladies, are any of you familiar with this product?
Nope.
Yeah,
I'm
I
a
can.
farmer. I am a farmer from St. Lucia, and I am not aware of this. I used to be a member of SLHTA, but they are not even giving us a look in right now.
What is that
So-
acronym? What does that acronym stand for?
SLHTA, St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism
Yeah.
Association.
Yeah.
You said, as a farmer, you're actually a member of that association.
I used to be.
And you're saying that you used to be. And
Yeah.
what was your experience when you were a member of that association? Was it beneficial?
No, it was not. That's why I decided to take a stand and decide not to pay my subscription after
Okay.
COVID.
All right.
Ms. Brandon,
Well, as I said,
I think this is a program they wanted to do. I'm not sure if it ever got off the ground.
No, it
Great.
never did.
I don't think it's
It never got off the ground.
yeah, it's not an active program that they have right now.
okay. All right. Thank you. I mean, well, generally, I mean, my intention is to, throughout my presentation, I may stop and ask some questions. This is one point at which I always ask questions, because I am interested in finding out what are the experience of farmers in the specific Caribbean countries when it comes to supplying to hotels in their countries. And we have 3 countries on board here. So I hope there may be 1 or 2 farmers that can share their experience, or what is the experience that they may be aware of, even from other farmers. Anybody?
All right, ladies, any of you have any feedback on your experience or the experience of others who you are acquainted with, working with hotels as farmers?
pre-COVID, I used to work with 1, 2, 3 hotels in,
Was it supplying produce?
yes, supplying produce
Okay.
pre-COVID. But post-COVID, nothing has happened, and it has nothing to do with the hotels. It has everything to do with the weather, COVID, and the adverse weather conditions has not been conducive to producing the things that I used to produce pre-COVID. So I'm not able to supply them anymore. But I'm
Okay.
working on, presently I am in London, but I will be returning to St. Lucia in the new year. So I am hoping that with this course, it has been really insightful. So I am going back into farming full time.
Okay. And prior to COVID, was your experience positive in terms of supplying to the hotel sector?
Oh, so positive. Sometimes I used to sell so many things to them. I sell to Massey as well, but I mostly sell to Massey right now. But
Okay.
the level that I used to produce pre-COVID, it is not anymore.
Okay.
But I'd
All right.
love to be able to go back to that level.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
Also me on a small scale now, but I have a lot of friends that sell directly to the hotels.
And do you know what their experience has been?
Well, it's for them, it's a good one because you get a lot more for your produce. Although it has to be on a very high end, meaning that you cannot just bring anything for them, but the price is very good.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. If no one else wants to chip in, I can continue. Sorry. All right. So we looked at the supply side, right, in terms of produce to hotel market. Okay. Before I continue onto this slide.
Yes, Cassandra has her hands
Oh,
raised.
okay. Yes, please go ahead, Cassandra.
Okay, well, in St. Vincent, we did not have a lot of big hotels, like big hotel chains, prior to Sandals. So, what happens? We had a lot of local vendors, farmers selling to the hotels. I myself, at one time, produced to sell to several hotels in the Grenadine Islands. What happens here also is that we have some, what a better name might be, hucksters. So these people buy on behalf of the hotels. So some persons, um, this person would buy like from me, from other producers. They would drive around or have people deliver stuff for them. So they come like, a main point, and they might be supplying to like, maybe a dozen or more of the hotels in the Grenadines and around the islands. But here, because they were small, you had a lot of farmers selling to them, plus these people who, buy on behalf of the hotels. But the problem here since Sandals came is something that you mentioned earlier, where they now are not going to deal with half a dozen vendors. And sometimes there is tomatoes, sometimes there is not. So apparently they probably bringing in their own, or they dealing with rainforest or something like that.
Okay. All right.
But otherwise it was good. It's good here selling to the hotels.
Okay. So the system was working with the vendors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
For St. Lucia, before you continue, for St. Lucia, I'm aware of a few of our farmers who have had a difficult relationship with hotels because of the payment terms.
Which I'm aware of, yes.
Yeah, so some farmers, it's not sustainable because some of the hotels, their payment terms are up to 90 days. And so, yeah, it's just not lucrative for for some persons. I mean, they have the framework to make it work. But for some farmers, it just has not been working out well.
Okay. Okay. Payment terms is an issue. I've heard that complaint many times as well. And is there a general feeling that hotels procure enough local produce? Or it's difficult to say?
I would think it's difficult to say, because in as much as they do have relationships with local farmers, I'm not sure what's the ratio for the products that they import and the products that they purchase locally. So that one, but I know hotels do have an interest in continuing the partnership with local farmers in buying produce from them. It's just that like one of the members mentioned earlier, the climate really hasn't been what it's used to. So a lot of farmers haven't been able to produce the produce on the scale that they used to as well.
Okay, okay. I noticed Cassandra has her hand raised.
Oh, I was going to say the same thing. You see, in some of the more developed countries, they have farms that have greenhouses and so. So, they're able to produce things all year round, regardless of the weather, except, well, for these past 3 months where greenhouse or not, the weather is just, preventing you from doing what you have to do. Well, yeah, that is one problem here because a lot of our small farmers just grow out in the open. During rainy season, a lot of rain, there would be any lettuce for the hotels because
Right.
the people don't have greenhouse. So, there's that supply and demand depending on the weather.
Okay, okay. So that's a major issue to consider in terms of ability to supply to the hotel sector. Okay, thank you very much for your feedback. All right, let me continue. All right, so if we look at the flip side, which is bringing tourism to rural communities, there's another quote here from the World Tourism Organization. So that in terms of rural tourism is described as those tourism activities carried out in the rural area that aim to interact with rural life and know the traditions and the way of life of the people and the attractions of the area of the product that is offered. And so rural community tourism can comprise many different elements, right? So if we start from the blue box on our left, looking at rural heritage, this can comprise our traditional architecture or industrial heritage. In some cases, you talk about, the village architecture, churches, and you have the activities that occur in your rural spaces, such as farming, fishing, because of the expanse of nature, the possibilities for riding and cycling and walking in nature. Then we have the issue of, just your general rural life, your local events, the country style food, traditional music, crafts, and so forth, the rural way of cooking. And then you have your landscape, the countryside, your lakes, your rivers, your hills and mountainside, your scenery forests. So those as a package provide several assets that are attractive from a tourism point of view. So, these are some of the ways in which we can create tourism in the rural community space. And so if we look at where rural tourism would have, Europe, would have been one of the key locations where rural tourism started. And what would occur is that farmers would rent rooms in their homes, which promoted, experiencing country lifestyle with families in rural areas and understanding and appreciating their customs. So there was just a focus on accommodation in the rural space and exploring the countryside and the small towns, right? And so public entities foster the development of this activity in Europe. It was seen as a way for farms to diversify their income so that there were other income earning opportunities outside of agriculture. So key drivers for this market included heritage, a desire to connect with heritage and rural lifestyle, as well as an interest in peace and quiet. Coming from the very busy, European towns and cities, the rural area was seen as an area, a space to kind of relax and recharge, right? To be able to access nature and engage in various activities that were more conducive in this more natural environment. And so for example, this picture shows, a bed and breakfast in England. And so tea time at an English bed and breakfast. And also it's the issue of this bed and breakfast, and in some other locations, you will see it also come up in Europe. Accommodation was seen as a very strategic angle for rural tourism, because it is one of the most essential ingredients in the rural tourism equation, because of the fact that when a visitor stays in your rural community, you spend more in that rural community. So an overnight visitor is more valuable than just a visitor that comes for the day and leaves, right? So overnight visitors are shown to spend significantly more than those who just make a day trip. And so one of the things also from where we sit in the Caribbean is to think what could comprise the elements of a rural stay or rural type accommodation, in your respective countries, whether it's St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis. Another accommodation, European accommodation that essentially is also similarly very popular, is what are known as a French gîte, right? So a gîte, as are depicted by these pictures here, would typically refer to a vacation home in rural France for rent. And it will reflect, the characteristics of that particular rural French territory. So again, if we are looking at, a rural type stay within our countries, what would be the characteristics of the particular territories that we would want to show off to visitors? And so rural tourism in Europe, as I said, Europe is considered a leader and the largest, even to this day, the largest global provider of rural tourism. Eurogîtes is actually a European rural tourism umbrella group. And the screenshot here shows a page from that website. And there is a website link below the picture. And so this organization comprises, or this grouping comprises 28 organizations, rural tourism organizations from 25 countries. And they lobby and market on behalf of rural tourism operators within their respective countries. So Eurogîtes, that is the site. They estimate that rural tourism supports approximately 900,000 direct and indirect jobs in Europe, generating 150 billion euros in gross income each year. And so the possibilities of rural tourism from, a region where it has become more entrenched and established. And it's a traditional type of vacation in European countries. And then also now we move now from Europe to Latin America. So I'm just showing you some examples of, how rural tourism is carried out in various regions across the world, right? Because, and then, it helps us to get ideas for what can take place in our own territories. So in the case of Latin America, what has become popular is this concept of an agro-food route, right? And essentially, an agro-food route, which are in Spanish called rutas, R-U-T-A-S. They're tourism routes that are built around a key agricultural product in a particular region, which is known for the production of that particular product. So for example, here I am showing a map of a wine route in the tourism belt, the wine tourism belt in southern Argentina, which is a wine growing region in Argentina. And this belt comprises traditional farms, industrial wineries, and even museums, including fossil replicas. And so Argentina is the largest producer of wine in South America and the 5th largest in the world. And as a result, they are receiving a growing number of wine-related tourists. I have some links at the bottom of my presentation. So when you receive the presentation, you will be able to, find out more information on some of these. For example, this particular wine route in Argentina. In fact, according to Wikipedia, it mentions that this wine route in southern Argentina, and because they have received so many more tourists in recent years, the wineries have begun to hire dedicated staff and hold special to cater to the tourism. Remember, their business was they are in the business of producing wine, but they have now been able to diversify that they have to hire staff to actually attend to the growing tourism business. And this includes holding special musical and arts events. They have built restaurants on their wineries, small hotels on their premises. And initially, the producers saw the tourism as a way to increase their brand visibility. However, it has also become a means to increase wine sales, as the boutique wineries record up to 50% of their income from this source. And then direct sales of larger wineries has also surged. So this is an example of how you have a particular agricultural product and tourism is brought into the mix, and it actually creates an even stronger demand for that that product as a result of the incorporation of tourism, right? All right, let me continue. Oh, sorry, I went backwards. All right, this is another example of a agri-food route, this time in Mexico, and it is connected to the popular tequila alcoholic drink. And so there is it's a route called La Ruta de Tequila, or in English, the Tequila Trail. It actually has become now a UNESCO recognized World Heritage Site. And it's a road network which connects 8 towns around the tequila volcano that comprises the principal tequila production areas. The route has become so popular that it is now a cultural and gastronomic destination. And it includes various types of activities, such as tequila-themed festivals and events, right? So this is actually a picture from a magazine, which is talking about, how big this tequila route has become. This is another map of that tequila belt. And so it also includes, you can do the tequila route in many ways, right? You can do it via train. This is one example, the Jose Cuervo Express. You can do it via car. You can do it via bus. You can do it via motorcycle. You can even walk, right? So according to the Mexico Chamber of Tequila Industry, it is a major source of tourism into the area for this tequila route, and they have seen a steady increase in visitors, which has actually resulted in a hotel building boom in the town of Tequila, right? Within just 10 years, a few tequila distilleries have started offering various types of tours and tastings. And so as part of this tequila route, it includes tequila culture, crafts, archaeological sites, and a variety of tourist spots. So, there's all sorts of add-ons now complement the fact that people are coming for a particular product to experience how this product is made, how this product is grown, and all of the culture that surrounds it. Because it really is a farming belt. that grows this particular product that makes this alcoholic drink. Also, moving now back to Argentina, this is something called yerba mate. It's a tea that is consumed by Argentinians, and they sip the tea all day long, out of these beautiful mugs. So there also is a yerba mate route in Argentina, and it allows travelers to visit various sites, to learn about the entire yerba mate production process, from the plantations that produce the yerba mate to the final products harvest, drying, milling, and canning, right? So along, within this production belt, visitors can see and taste various types of the yerba, whether it's organic, leafy. They can discover its energizing properties. And there's, various cultural activities such as a mate ceremony, which is related to this product, right? And so there's what happens is that these roots become a kind of an ecosystem that comprise many different elements. You have the farm, the farm production. You have the industrial production, agro-industrial production. You have the restaurants, the bars, the shops. You have historical and cultural sites. You have accommodation businesses, cabins, bungalows, hotels. And then, of course, you have the transportation and tourism services. So, a wide variety of business establishments can be created just from the establishment of tourism routes in these production belts. And then I move on to this one. I think this is the last one, a last example of the same agri-food route. This one is in Colombia. This is a coffee route. And it's called El Eje Cafetero, or in English, the Coffee Axis of Colombia. And it covers the main coffee growing regions in Colombia. This also has been designated as UNESCO World Heritage, and it comprises several coffee plantations, and some of them now offer accommodation. And so visitors can tour the plantations and be involved in other attractions and activities. And again, when you receive the presentation, you'll see various links to be able to access more information. And so we have to think in our countries, where could we create some of these routes, beyond just one site? How can we make connections across different farms and sites within particular territories that produce various items? I know say, for example, in some countries like St. Lucia, cocoa production, is transforming into, tourist attraction. There are, tours to cocoa plantations and so forth. But it's worth thinking across our, the various countries, what else could become routes of interest or production areas of interest? I don't know if I want to, if anyone has any ideas from where they are, if anybody wants to say, okay, based on where I am, I think this could be a nice route for visitors. Anyone?
Ladies, does anyone want to make a contribution on an idea that they could develop based on your location, your farm?
Oh yes. I have Tadpole Nature Trail, and I have other stuff that I want, other projects that I want to bring on board, like cottages and the farm to table theme and what have you. So I'm listening very attentively, and to see what I can do further down the line. I'm looking at what I want to do for next year.
But also, in any of the 3 countries that are participating today, are there any signature products that you think more could be made of or developed on to create visitor interest?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Hi, good
We have,
night.
okay.
From St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm actually thinking in terms of our arrowroot
Our route,
and
okay,
and the connection to the indigenous people.
okay.
And I can actually see something like this making sense in our context. And the where we use, so we have something that we call Madungo. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it,
No, I'm
but
not. So please tell me more.
so it is like maybe somebody here could help me out. It's something that you how should I describe? It's almost like a bakes, what we call bakes here,
Uh,
but
Bakes, yes, okay.
it's fried and it's using from the arrowroot, right? So there is that coming out from it. And I think that that is something I can see making sense in our context. But
So
how it's fleshed out, I am kind of stuck here for now. But
in
I want to be connected to the, I think it makes sense for it to be connected to the indigenous people. Well,
If
descendants
I
of the
may chime
indigenous
in,
people.
I am also from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and more so the rural side, so that's fancy.
Okay,
So yes, I do agree that the arrowroot lends itself to the context that we are engaged in here, not only the arrowroot, but also the cassava. So
okay,
I can actually see where we can have agritourism playing a pivotal role in the development of the rural communities where most of our indigenous persons and personnel and people, they are stationed. I am looking at the screen and I am seeing the coffee route in Colombia. So I am here trying to imagine and picturing about at least, let's say, 5 to 10 acres of arrowroot, and also showcasing our way of living, way of life prior to how we used to live, prior to having the concrete buildings, probably having one or two of the thatched roofs, just like in Dominica, where they have the Kalinago community. So I'm looking at fields of arrowroot and cassava, probably intertwined, if they can be mixed, and a display of those houses that were used by our indigenous people in
okay,
an area set up, quite picturesque.
okay, okay. Thank you. These ideas are important because it helps us to think beyond the beach or
Hi,
pardon?
hi,
Annie,
good night. I'm Annie Bob from St. Vincent and the Grenadines as well. I want to
Thank you for
add,
chirping in.
yes, on during Independence or sometime on our National Heroes Day, um, they normally have this thing where they sell the madongo and they do stuff like that, and it attracts a lot of people, but it's like a once a year thing. And now
Yes,
I'm
it's a
thinking how
one-day
this,
thing.
yeah. So I'm just thinking how we can expand this with this because the model is already there, and then just expand it as it could become something of a agritourism stuff and continue because it attracts a lot of people in Fancy, in Greg's, in different places that have it, just once a year, one day a year. And I'm seeing that if we really look into it, that this can be extended to create these kind of setting for us.
Okay, okay. Well, I mean, it clearly must be something that is dear to the hearts of Vincentians, because the three of you have spoken to it, in addition to cassava. So that's why I ask these questions, because I find that there's always something in a particular country that you may not necessarily see in another country that offers a potential for an agritouristic experience.
We have one more contribution from Ms. Desmona Gambrell Claxton.
Okay, please go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. One crop that I would recommend that can bring tourism is sunflowers. I see that as being picturesque, where people want to come and, not just buy the flowers, but take pictures in the sunflower fields, so that can bring some tourism to
And
whichever destination.
but is sunflowers grown where you are?
Yes, they're grown because they're grown with warm climate.
Oh, okay, okay. It's not something that I come across in the Caribbean, but as you rightly say, it can be grown in a warm climate. So, I mean, it's good for people to have these sorts of ideas, because a lot of the types of tourism activities that you're seeing that we have been discussing, it started with just an idea, and then it mushroomed into something else. So these ideas are very good. All right, let me continue. Okay, so just to look at what are some of the tourism trends that are making, an agritourism experience, of interest to tourism, right? Because for several decades, tourism was associated with sun, sea, sand, museums, or monuments of history. But since what started to occur in the 1980s was that you saw new and differentiated tourism products began to emerge. And so the tourism offer expanded considerably. And as such, there has been strong development in the areas of cultural tourism, sports, nature, adventure, and rural tourism. So the World Tourism Organization had a 2019 Tourism Highlights publication, which identified the following travel trends, right? And this is making experiences such as rural tourism more and more attractive, because the demographic of your tourists is changing, right? The current tourists, they're interested in travel to change. They're interested in living like a local, having a local type experience. There's a greater quest for authenticity and transformation. Because we're living in the era of social media, there's a travel to show, Instagrammable moments, to be able to every minute take a picture, post it on social media, and so forth, and so that they're showing what that experience is like to their friends and family. And then also pursuit of healthy life. People are interested in activity, in walking and wellness, and so that is very suitable to your rural environment, to a natural environment, where you can go hiking, go on nature trails, even engage in farming activities where you have to be active, right? And then also that connection to your food, that source of your food, in terms of a healthy life. And of course, there is, the interest in going off the beaten track, connected to travel to show, be able to take home memorable stories. Also we're seeing that there's a greater, there are more solo travel. People are traveling on their own, as well as there's even multi-generational travel, like families are traveling, your grandmother, your father, your mother, your grandchildren, etc., all traveling as a group, as a result of the aging populations, and in some cases for the solo travel, single households. There's rising awareness of sustainability issues, environmental issues, reduction in plastic, right? We also, there's also a community-based tourism enterprise handbook that is produced by Compete Caribbean, Some of you might be familiar with that organization. It's based in Barbados. They have also identified various trends that make, community and rural tourism more attractive. People want to actively participate. They want to have an experience. They don't want just to observe or to sit on the sidelines. They want to be involved in the experience, right? They want to try out local foods and drinks. They want to have meaningful interactions with local people about their culture and their nature. They want to learn about everyday life, local life. They want to have fun experiences that can't be done from where they are coming from, and they want, again, to be able to take home memorable stories. However, at the same time, they want to be able to feel comfortable and to feel safe. So even though there might be increased interest in adventure, they're not throwing out the need to be safe within all of this context. Okay? So these are some of the trends. And one of the things that to me, and even just from where I sit, the country where I live, to see how the tourism has transformed. We see that tourists are getting out of hotels significantly more than what they would have done before. The days of going to a hotel and sitting down on the beach for your entire vacation and sipping a watered down pina colada that includes no local ingredients, those days are done. Nowadays, tourists, they want to be up and about. They want to see what a particular country has to offer, right? And so I think it lends itself for people being willing to go into rural spaces and experience something different. All right? And just to mention that the concept of agritourism is not new. In other territories across the world, they have been engaging in this concept. So for example, last year in 2023, there was the 16th International World Agri-Tourism Day, all right? And so they have various conferences and there are various associations. So, we may be a little bit slow in coming to this concept, but in other territories across the world, for example, we mentioned Europe, Latin America, even in Asia, the concept of agritourism is fairly well established. And there was a quote that I saw in relation to this particular conference that I thought was particularly incisive. When the primary sector contributes the least to our GDP and the tertiary sector the most, why not combine the best of both to ensure inclusive growth? Right? So I hope that can stick with you. Okay, so just moving on in terms of some of the things that we have to consider if we want to engage or make or to develop a rural tourism offering. We have to realize that rural tourism is more than just bringing visitors onto a farm. There's a lot of creativity that is required to transform a farm into an attraction. Visitors may not always be interested in specific farming activity in and of itself, but possibly it is the food that creates a curiosity that links the visitor to that type of production activity. And you may have to work backwards from the food or may need to create an experience, right, involving the various elements. And so there are some of the elements that are listed here, the attractions, accommodation, the culinary offering, health and wellness, and being part of a route. All right, so I am going to actually bring up a video to show a brief video, if that is okay. Mr. McDowell?
Yes, go ahead. It'll show.
All right. It's gonna link. I'm gonna have to actually. I am going to stop sharing my presentation so that I can share the video. So it's actually going to be a video of a farm tour in the USA, or a kind of a farm tourism destination in the USA.
Okay, so you'll share your screen, right?
That's what it is. I'm gonna share the just a second.
If you want, you could send a link to me and I could share my screen so they could see it.
All right, I'm going to, no, I should be able to, just give me a second.
Okay,
All right,
no
let me
problem.
just share the screen here.
The reason why I offered to share it is because of your internet connection.
Oh, I just realized. All right, so how best to send it to you? Should I just send it to you on email?
You could send it in the chat. Just paste it in the chat.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna copy the link in the chat. That's a good idea, because as I said, my my internet has not been the best. I've just pasted it in the chat. It's Agri-Tourism in Colorado.
Okay, so I just got it. Give me a second. Let me just load it up. All right, I'm going to share my screen now.
If this looks more like a tool shed or a farm than a hotel, well, that's because it is. The Platte River Fort here near Greeley is an agro-tourism location. That means...
Okay, is everyone able to see the video?
Yes.
Yes,
I can
able to
Yes.
see and hear. Perfect.
All right, good.
If this looks more like a tool shed or a farm than a hotel, well, that's because it is. The Platte River Fort here near Greeley is an agro-tourism location. That means it's a working farm, and people can also come stay here and learn more about what farm life is like, all without losing those five-star accommodations. Welcome to a place where the longhorn cattle often outnumber the guests.
He's super, super sweet.
Where the rooms move locations with the seasons.
This is a Conestoga wagon.
And life on the farm meets fine dining and spas.
We want people to have an understanding and some get the experience of what it's like to be on a working farm and ranch.
You could call Platte River Fort a hotel, but it's more than that.
We're somewhere between a lodge, a bed and breakfast, a small resort.
Sitting on more than 200 acres of northern Colorado farmland,
We have a lot of hiking trails.
it's best to take a side-by-side to get to your room.
We're headed down to what we call Yurt Village.
Your tents line the riverbank, filled with beds, pillows, chairs, and yes,
You
wine.
get to feel like you're camping and be in nature, have a nice fire at night, sit by the fire. And yet we kind of do everything for you.
And if a tent, even this tent, is still a little out of your comfort level, maybe a wagon is more your style.
It sleeps 4. It has a king-size bed and a set of bunk beds in it.
Platte River Fort is a working farm, but it also serves a purpose beyond what the lake produces.
This creates a really unique opportunity for people to get a new perspective and see how other people that they think are different from themselves are actually a lot more alike.
The property is centered around a replica of Bent's Fort in La Junta, with rooms facing out towards the river.
This is some place to come and have an experience.
An experience that's sure to be an adventure. And you can stay in those yurts for the next couple of months. Once winter comes, they put them away until the spring. But that covered wagon has heating and air conditioning, can stay in it year round. In Greeley, I'm Mark Salinger, 9 News.
Thank you
Okay,
very
so that
much.
is, yes, you're welcome.
All right, thank you, Ms. Madonna. So I'm gonna go back to sharing my presentation. But that just gives you an idea of ways in which a farm can be transformed into a tourism destination. What's happening here? Okay, so as I was discussing, right, how do you create this farm attraction or a rural interaction? So you have to think of ways that you can infuse fun into your farm tour. How can you combine education with entertainment, right? I've heard the term being coined to say agri-tainment, for example, how you can incorporate heritage and culture. And then, how can you combine your farming activities with other related activities, such as this boat along a riverside? A lot of farms, they're fed by rivers, or, the previous video mentioned hiking trails along the farm property. So it's about, as I mentioned, being creative, thinking, how can it be more than just a farm? Okay. When you think about accommodation, people might immediately think, okay, I don't have the money to build, certain types of rooms. Tents is an option. We just saw that in the video, for example. And you have various types of tents. You have, your very basic tents, like what are shown in this picture, or you have someone had a point? No? Okay. Or there's a concept called glamping, for example, glamorous camping, right? That, it may be a tent, but it comes with all of the glamorous amenities that you may want from a 4-star hotel. So, there are various ways to think about accommodation, and how it can be offered in a feasible manner in a rural setting or a farm setting. And we spoke, for example, about how important the issue is in certain rural tourism destinations, such as in Europe, such as the quaint bread and breakfast or a French gîte. So think about what would that look like? How would you design that type of accommodation in your own territory? Sorry. And of course, there's the issue of the culinary aspect, the food, because food is a big deal, right? Food is one of the key experiences that tourists are looking for when they come to a destination. And again, I quote again from the World Tourism Organization, food is connected deeply to its origins, right? So the rural destinations can mark, and I'm paraphrasing from the quote, essentially rural destinations can market themselves as being truly unique and appeal to tourist travelers because of the flavors that can be offered in these destinations. Food tourists, for example, they have higher than average expenditure. They are demanding. They don't necessarily like sameness. The culinary offer should not be bland. It must have some level of personality. It should reflect the territory in which it is being provided. The concept of terroir, Terroir, which I think is a French term, is what differentiates food in different territories. So it gives the food a sense of local identity. And also through food, your visitor is able to access your culture and your heritage through tasting and experiencing the food. And also bear in mind that tradition and innovation can coexist, right? Just because it is your traditional food, persons from St. Vincent and the Grenadines mentioned I hope I'm pronouncing it properly, the modingo, right? From the arrowroot. And, tradition and innovation can coexist. So your traditional foods items can also incorporate elements of innovation. And food is a continuous solution. You can renew and adapt offerings to the needs of your visitors and your consumers. And also it is important for destinations to be able to articulate a credible and authentic narrative for their food tourism offerings. Okay, so the issue of health and wellness. And this is a growing area. And it can connote a connection to nature, to relaxation, to beauty, physical, spiritual, and mental practices and well-being. The rural environment is ideal for concepts of well-being. And when we even think about products that are used in spas, many of these products can be grown on the farm. We're talking about things like your lemongrass, your mint, your coconut butter, your coconut oil, your ginger, your honey. And I'm sure in every country, you know, whether in St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Vincent, you can think of herbs, you know, aromatic plants that can add to that spa or wellness experience. And then also, you know, forming a route, you know, you might be one particular location, but how can you connect with your neighbors, connect with other people in your community to offer, you know, complementary services that are attractive to the visitor. So the visitor comes in the community and has various things to do and see, right? So, you know, those are things to consider as well. Who can you connect with? So tips for developing your idea. You know, look for opportunities, you know, look for gaps that might not be filled. Look for ways in which you can create something new. How can you scan your environment for tourism possibilities and research the history, understand the culture, know what it is you are talking about. Pay attention to customer service and satisfaction and quality. Understand what the market requires, what the market is interested in. Look at the suitability of your surrounding environment. Is it clean? Are the people receptive to the idea of visitors coming into the community? You know, what are some of the infrastructural issues, the services that may, you know, need to be upgraded to complement what you are offering? You know, seek guidance, create partnerships, you know, test the market, have a pilot, you know, and of course, safety, security, and hygiene will always be important. So, and with all of that said, you have to become an expert at what you do. One of the things that I tend to recommend, read the travel reviews, what people say about destinations, what people find attractive, what people are interested in, you know. Look at your competition, you know, try and exceed visitor expectations, go on the TripAdvisors and so forth, see what tourists want to experience and what, you know, what really gets them going when they visit a particular site. So these are, you know, some tips if you want to develop further in the area of developing an attraction around a farm or a rural area. Okay, so we're gonna close with some examples, two particular examples of rural tourism or agritourism activities in the Caribbean. The first one is called PEG Farm in Barbados. And so PEG Farm is a nature reserve, and it describes itself as a biodynamic farm offering tours, farm to table, cafe, farm shop, camping, and workshops on some of the property's practices. The farm is 108 acres, and it is focused on health and wellness. So PEG is actually an acronym for People, Environment, Growth, PEG. So the farm features free-range livestock, such as cattle, pigs, chicken, a medicinal herb garden, fruit orchard, and various other types of food production, as well as a forested area. Visitors can tour the farm and the nature reserve, and you know they receive a lot of visitors, such as from schools, and who they will come and they will learn about the property's biodynamic and permaculture principles. The location, the site, they advocate what is known as restorative agricultural practices, which essentially are agricultural practices that are environmentally sustainable. So it resolves increased environmental outcomes. And visitors can also enjoy a tranquil setting and stunning views of the coastline. And when you receive the presentation, you will see the link to receive more information. Sure, why I have a thing over my screen. Okay, and then the next one is Belmont Estate, which is a premier tourism attraction in Grenada. And they offer the visitors an opportunity to learn about rural Grenadian life through tours of its organic farm, cocoa processing facilities, heritage museum and gardens, and they have a Grenadian restaurant. The estate actually dates back to the 1600s, and it produced coffee, nutmeg, sugar, and nutmeg, and sugar. However, due to various challenges in the sector, they sought to diversify the operations and thus open the tourism component in 2002. They have had disruptions due to hurricanes in 2004 and 2005, but they have refurbished and kept going. Currently, cocoa is a chief product, which is complemented by a variety of spices as well as a rearing of livestock. They have a chocolate factory that produces single-source organic dark and milk chocolates. They have a heritage museum, gardens, and a goat dairy producing goat cheese. They have a Creole restaurant, which is a 250-seater restaurant which serves local food, as well as they have a chocolate bonbon shop. And so they offer tours of the entire cocoa to chocolate bar process, tours of their tropical gardens and farms. They actually employ approximately 80 to 100 workers, and they receive 25,000 visitors per year. The company has been recognized regionally and internationally as a best practice in agritourism and has played a pivotal role in Ghana's tourism industry. I recently was at participated in a agritourism workshop in which a representative from Belmont Estate made a presentation, and they really are very passionate about what they do and their impact on the community in which they exist. So that integration of agricultural production, taking care of the environment, engaging the community, and realizing if all of this is done, it makes an attractive product for your visitors. So they have essentially figured out a winning formula. So they're just to say, these two examples demonstrate that the concepts that I have been talking about can work in the Caribbean and are already underway in the Caribbean. And these are two of several other examples. And so just, so know what I'm talking about is not a pie in the sky. It's, it is being done. It's been done at various scales, and it's been done all across, maybe in a smaller niche way in the Caribbean, maybe not as extensive as it's been done in for example, Europe, but just to say that it is doable. And so I would like to close my presentation here and open the floor for any questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brandon, for that presentation. Of course, the ladies, based on what's in, then I'm sure many of you have some questions, maybe some ideas that you need some assistance with fleshing out. So now would be the time to ask these questions on Brandon, will continue to share her wealth of knowledge to us. So ladies, please feel free to ask any questions or give any feedback that you have from the presentation that you have just been able to witness. Any questions, ladies? Any feedback you'd like to provide?
Hi, good night. I would like to say I'm very pleased that I got to be in the presentation. And agritourism is something that's been on my heart and I've been talking about. And now listen to the presentation and to see how it can be fleshed out. And I hope those of us on here from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that we could come together and start to brainstorm of how we can go into this, because that's something that I will want to go into. And that farm to plate and having the whole experience of the agritourism is something that I really want to see happen. So I'm pleased with the presentation, and thanks very much for opening it up. And the fact that you made a statement that in the earlier part that from AICA perspective, that you guys can see a solution, something to that effect, because and if you guys are able to make it possible, because a lot of time we talk about stuff and it seems so hard to come up with a solution. So I would like to see the solution and how we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines can get this going. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much, Annie, for your contribution. Of course, this content will be shared with you all, so the recording will be provided as well as the presentation. So you would be able to utilize this information and put it in practice, not just receive it, but actually put it in practice in being able to better develop your ideas and different ways that you'd be able to bring in income onto your farm. Thank you very much, Ms. Annie Bobby, for that contribution. Anyone else would like to share, or you have any questions about any idea that you'd like to flesh out? We have the expert here on that. Now is the time to ask these questions, ladies.
If I may ask, I am from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Like I said, I'm Joyla Roberts from Fancy. I am a primary school teacher and also a farmer from, I'd say, birth up, because I met my generation of farmers through my great-grandparents, passed on to my grandparents, so it's now on to my parents and on to me. I do enjoy the presentation, but my question is, if there are certain established organizations in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that can pull together resources in terms of probably data.
I've stopped hearing her. Is it my end?
Not just your end. I think she may have muted herself accidentally.
I'm sorry about that. Yes, as I was saying, if perchance organizations can collaborate and probably look at means of organizing a project with the main aspect of highlighting agritourism, should such proposal be detailed, fleshed out, where does ICA come in? Do these organizations send the project proposal to ICA, or does ICA come in as a mentor as to which wider organization can be approached with the project proposal to have certain aspects of agritourism actually highlighted? It may not necessarily be aquaculture, but more so in terms of crop production. And like we would have been highlighting thus far, the madongo, the cassava. Because I am looking at, and I'm really inspired by what I would have seen regarding the coffee, cocoa. So I'm asking the question, how does ICA assist in the development of a project, and more so having the project being placed on ground?
Okay, so I can proceed to answer, Mr. McDowell?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. So I think ICA's best way to assist is probably with guidance in terms of with the project preparation. So for example, presently, just to give an example, in Ghana, the government has contracted ICA to develop, in a collaboration with them, an agritourism policy for the country, right? We have also been approached by one or two other countries or interests to provide guidance on agritourism projects and agritourism policies. So I do think we stand ready to assist in the development of projects in the area of getting the funding to execute. That is something that we are also trying to see where those pools of funding exist, right? So I can't tell you right now that there is a list of funders that we have identified for agritourism. It's something that we are trying to sensitize donors on, to see, for them to be able to see the possibilities for improving welfare in rural communities. But it is a continuing dialogue for us to try and convince the donors of this. But until we have sourced the funding that is required, we can provide assistance with respect to product and project development.
All right.
Awesome. I'm truly grateful.
Thank you very much for that response. Ms. Brandon, we have two more questions, two hands up. I will call on Renis first.
Yes, good night. I just had a question. In Nevis, I was wondering if the farmers who are smaller scale, does it make sense to link with the local, like the touring, the ones who do tours for the tourists, or the historical sites who give tours, anything like that, to start off first, or should you just develop your idea and run with it?
I think it's important to have a concept, to have an idea, to actually, even if you're partway developed, before you engage the market or the tour operators. I think tour operators can provide some guidance on, what they think might be of interest. But I think you also, a farm entity also needs to go somewhere down the wicket, to have something developed as even a pilot or, as to start off. So, there's nothing like, what people say, seeing is believing. You may not have to have it perfect, but you have to have something to show or to at least start the discussion.
Got it. Okay, so start with your idea, get it sorted and settled, and then you proceed. Okay, thank you.
That would be my recommendation. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have a question from Bronte.
Thank you very much. Not so much a question, but a comment. I did include it in the chat, but I'll just mention it here. For our SKN practical on the weekend, we would have visited a farm that I think is doing an excellent job and could certainly capitalize on agritourism, where they offer tours to persons who visit the farm. So they allow visitors to tour the farm itself. And then they also do cooking demonstrations and maybe even allow the tourists to take away samples from the cooking demonstration. So I just wanted to sort of mention that because the presentation tonight fits in very well, having just gone on that particular practical, and good job to the facilitator. Excellent presentation.
Thank you very much, Bronte. And I as she has said, these they're examples, right? They're examples of agritourism all around us. Small people who have an idea and are putting it into practice. So thank you for that, that comment.
Okay, thank you very much for that comment. Next we have Bernadette.
Thank you. I must say this was a very motivating session. And it's motivating, but it left me feeling a bit sad with some regrets because it was like maybe about 20 years ago. I had this concept of a heritage village in the over the river, as we say in St. Vincent, maybe in the Orange Hill area, where across the area of the aqueduct. And I took it to a bank manager and to discuss it and to try to get his interest in it and everything else. And he thought it was a very good idea. But that's as far as it went. A very good idea. So funding and people would have the vision, but the lack of resources would just inhibit you all over again. But I just want to say, it is good that we are starting this conversation. And back then, my concept was not for like so much like for the external tourists. I was even thinking about our internal tourism because I was saying that our children they need to know our history, they need to experience our rich history, and we have the opportunity to do it. So that is why I thought about it, having this heritage village where, like somebody spoke earlier, you have your huts, you have the games, you teach them how to cook the indigenous food right there, so that somebody can you can have like a weekend trip. People can go out and have clean family fun, you know, and it is something that I still would like to see happening here in St. Vincent.
Well, Bernadette, you sound like you're a visionary. To have conceptualized this idea so many years ago and actually have gone to a bank, that shows a significant level of seriousness. And I know resources is an issue. One of the things that I try to recommend. Pardon?
Winifred, you're unmuted. Can you please mute? Sorry, Miss Brandon, go ahead.
No problem. I think because resources will always be a constraint. Sometimes I would want to recommend a path of least resistance. What can be started with minimal resources, right? And I think that is how we have to approach it. The previous speaker, a previous participant mentioned a farm that she visited that they are actually offering tours. Based on what she would have seen, did it look like it took a lot of resources for that farm to be able to incorporate tours? You may not necessarily start with where you want to be, at your desired level, but what are elements that have minimal cost that can be put into place? And I think, given this may not be the conventional type of enterprise. So if we can figure out how to start small and to scale, I think that is an important approach.
Okay. Thank you very much for your feedback. Anyone else has any questions? I know we're 2 minutes past 8 o'clock, so we'll take one more question. One more question or feedback. Does anyone else have any contribution they'd like to make before we end this session this evening? Yes, Anja, go ahead. Anya, sorry, go ahead.
Thanks, Otto. Good night, Miss Brandon. I'm not sure if I missed it during the presentation, but does ICA still have that online rural tourism course? Because I remember doing it last year, and I'm really grateful for your presentation, for the reminders, but also for your encouragement to start small, because it's taken me about a year now to set up my rural tourism business. And I found that course to be very helpful in strategizing. So I'm just curious if you've mentioned it tonight. If not,
Is it still running, as it might be a useful resource for the other women?
Thank you, Anya, for mentioning it. No, I actually did not mention it in my presentation. It is a course that we offered online free last year. And we were hoping to offer it again this year, but we are actually in the process of making it available again. And so we're hoping that in early 2025, we can make that course available again.
Okay, that's great, because I think it is an additional, very helpful resource. So I found, especially in, positioning yourself with the marketing side of things. But thanks for tonight, and keep up the great work. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much, Anya.
All right, well, there you have it. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you. Good night.
this presentation. I must say it was very insightful. Not only did you give all the information, but you gave the examples as well on how it can be applied and the different ways that it has been applied right now. So yeah, I think everyone learned a lot this evening. And Ms. Shauna Brandon, well, this is not the first time. This is not the first time that you're doing this. But I'm very grateful that I was able to at least sit in and soak in all of the wisdom and the knowledge that you have been able to share with us this evening. And so, ladies, the presentation will be shared with you in the Ag-cademy groups and the respective groups, as well as this recording. It would be uploaded to YouTube. Of course, you will be notified once this recording is available on YouTube. Thank you so very much, Ms. Brandon, once again, for all that you have been able to share with us
And
this
it's a pleasure,
evening.
McDowell, and participants. Thank you for having me.